Javon Dexter tweeted out the eyes emoji right now.
Ooh, what does that mean?
Is it a D tackle, maybe? I don't know. Pick us in.
Yeah.
He's
Oh,
off the
no.
payroll.
Oh, no.
Who do they take?
It's Kiran Amegadjie from Yale, the offensive tackle.
Wait, you don't so I'm not familiar with his game, to be honest. I don't know.
He's very raw. He's very raw. So this is just a
super
pure upside play. Toolsy, long, athletic, but man, that's not a guy who's going to help you this year.
No, that's a Braxton Jones replacement.
I don't hate it though.
2 years.
I don't hate it though. Like, all right, I need to watch him before I say that, but I don't hate the thought process. Like that was always in the back of my mind because I mean, I think Steve is pretty familiar with what I think about Braxton Jones. Like, I don't think he's the left tackle in the future. Like, I still think you should be looking for that guy. And like, I'm not saying Kiran Amegadjie is either, but
I don't know how to pronounce his name too.
Yeah, for real. But I think the process is correct.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I would, I was more okay with him in the 130s, 120s. I mean, maybe he wouldn't get there with how traitsy he is, but it's just his tape is so raw. And it's also hard to tell because, he played at Yale. You're not getting good tape from Yale. I mean, we have no stats on him.
Was he a Senior Bowl guy?
No, I don't
he
think
at the
he was
Senior Bowl. I don't think so. I've got the rosters here.
He might have been invited and was injured, but he wasn't practicing. I know.
Damn.
Yeah,
it's a high upside, but it's a lot like Braxton Jones.
Did you like him better than Braxton Jones as a prospect?
No, I liked Braxton Jones better. But I think
they're very similar. Like, one thing I will say, 36-inch arms are not something you find. And this draft had like 4 guys with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is a rare trait. And this draft had that. But man, I'm a little disappointed.
Brugler had him at a 3rd round grade, number 87 overall. So it's maybe like a slight reach, but not crazy according to Dane Brugler. I think this is kind of the range where he should have gone. Like, he was getting some even round 2 hype, I feel like. But
yeah, Nate Tyson really liked him. I think he had a round.
I have to watch more. I mean, I had 3 Yale games of all 22, and I watched them all, and it's just like it's hard to scout those guys because the guys, like, he's going up against 220-pound edge players. Like, what am I learning from watching him win those guys? There was just not a lot of like true pass sets on tape.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah. So it's like how do you scout this? So like, and he didn't test athletically. So like, he looks like a good athlete against these.
He was coming off a torn quad.
I don't know.
He was coming off a torn quad. The first game I watched of him, I'm pretty sure he tore the quad in that game. And I messaged Steve right after watching. I was like, I hate this guy. This guy's tape offends me. And it was because he was playing on a torn quad and he couldn't be aggressive at all. The next 2 games I watched, he was really aggressive, really getting after people. But that first game really turned me off on him because I was just like, this guy has the wrong mentality out here. But Illinois kid, grew up in Hinsdale. So keeps following that trend. I think he has a pretty strong ceiling. We have his ceiling here around like a key player plus start or something like that. His ceiling is probably towards a Pro Bowl player. It's just not, it's unlikely that he hits that because he's starting out so raw. Mm-hmm. Like his physical profile, I think, can be a Pro Bowler. I think he's got pretty loose hips, and that length plus loose hips. I think the sky can be the limit for someone like that. It's just a question of getting him from Ivy League level of competition to NFL. And they have 2 years to do it with Braxton Jones already here. So I kind of support that and like that idea. But I don't know. I was just hoping for someone who was a bit more of a day one contributor, I guess.
Exactly. Like, I really wanted I would have been fine with a tackle because my thought process was like, I don't want to see Larry Borum ever again. So like, if you draft a swing tackle at 75, like, I think that has really good value because you're going to have injuries. But like, I don't see this guy stepping in at all this year. Like, I don't think he'd be like pretty much unplayable. I don't know if he's an upgrade over Larry Borum at this point. Like, the hope is that he will be, but he just doesn't do anything to help you this year. And I feel like the Bears really needed someone to help them out this year, even if it was just like a role player. It didn't have to be a starter, but someone who can make an impact in some capacity, and that's not this guy. But it's a high upside swing, so I don't hate that. But
let me ask you guys this: do you think there's any guard versatility for him?
he played guard in 2021.
Did he?
And was honorable mention All Ivy League team. So
Okay.
he has played. I mean, it's tough with 36-inch arms though. Like you don't see a lot of 36-inch arm
For
guard.
sure.
The thing with guard is he has the frame to anchor, right? I think he has the lower body thickness. He's going to be able to anchor just fine with some core strength there too. But I don't have proof of his anchor,
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know who the strongest player he's been bull rushed by.
I'm watching the highlights right now on the TV, and these guys are like linebackers playing edge. Like you don't really know.
It's just tough. It's just tough. But I mean, I'm sure the Bears worked him out, and I think Poles has kind of earned the benefit of the doubt on this.
Yeah, with the offensive line, in Poles we trust, right?
Yeah,
I know we were just talking about how his third round hasn't been his sweet spot, it's very possible like this is a complete bust of a pick, but it's also possible you get a starting quality left tackle in a year or two at pick 75, which would be great value.
3 third-round picks now. He's attacked traits all 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
The first 2 times where they were half measures where he's going after traits from big school guys who you might already know what they are, but they do have nice traits. This is a guy with really nice traits. You don't necessarily know who he is and is more of a ball of clay. So I can't appreciate that. It's not like with Valus and Zach Pickens. It was kind of like we might already know that their traits are kind of at their ceiling.
How old is Kiran Amegadjie?
He's 22.
So that's not terrible. The thing with drove me crazy. I mean, Valus Jones, we don't have to talk about, but with Zach Pickens, he played 4 years in South Carolina, and just his production was the same. He kind of broke out his last year, but relative to his production, it was all kind of similar. So I was like, okay, Gervin Dexter is new to football and super traitsy. I understand you thinking he just needs to play more to figure it out. I don't really know anything about Zach Pickens. He was a highly recruited guy. I think a 5-star recruit, and didn't do anything at South Carolina. That's what kind of drove me crazy. I just thought he was a developmental guy through and through.
Part of the thing with Pickens was he was asked to 2-gap on that D line as a nose tackle.
Yeah.
And he's not that. So that was part of the projection there of get him out of a 2-gap role, get him in a single gap 3-tech, and this guy might be able to flourish. That was my thought process at least. But you're right. He didn't produce there. He barely got by as a 2-gapping nose tackle. So,
yeah. And so the thing with, I guess, what I think is different with Kiran Amegadjie is he sounds just a kind of on the Gervin Dexter wavelength, right? Just a total ball of clay. You're just hoping you can teach how to play tackle, which I think there's way more case studies of that at offensive tackle than there are as a pass rusher. I feel like guys either really have it or they don't in most cases. I think you can point, and I'm not saying it's a great hit rate, but in terms of a developmental guys, you can take toolsy, the Jordan Mailatas of the world. There are case
That's
studies.
exactly who I was just thinking.
Yeah, that they kind of work out. I think what's his name, Bernard Raymond too. When with the Colts, he was a Pro Bowl last year. He was raw, new to the sport. There are case studies to kind of follow a blueprint too.
Now, Steve, do you remember? Is Kieran new to the sport at all, or was he just an Ivy League guy?
I was just reading Brugler's report, and he played in high school, all 4 years in high school. He was just not very heavily recruited. He was the 284th ranked offensive tackle in the 2020 recruiting class, so number 79.
Does that say where he went to high school?
What's that?
Does that say where he went to high school?
Central.
Hinsdale
wow,
Central?
It's my neighborhood high school. I mean, it's not my high school; it's the one across the way.
There you
I
go.
went to South.
You should have been scouted him in high school. What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, he's a little younger than me, but
I'm not sure I can put up with the Hinsdale Central Devil on the Bears. Coming from a Glenbard West alum, but
right, yeah, that's your rival.
I'll live with it, I suppose.
I'm sure that honestly, though, that factored into why they loved him so much. I mean, it is a thing for them. We know that's what they do. They draft hometown guys.
Yeah, No, they want that spirit, that fire from it of being like,
Mhm.
I grew up watching this team. I take a lot of pride in this jersey. Like that's a real thing in their scouting, I think.
He did get an invitation to the Senior Bowl, but couldn't participate because of the injury.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now,
I just wanted to ask your guys because I kind of just said like I'm not the I think Braxton Jones is fine. Again, I just like don't like I think there's a clear ceiling to his game. What are your guys' thoughts on Braxton Jones?
I think this pick kind of tells you the Bears' thoughts on Braxton Jones.
For
Is that
sure, for
they're
sure.
fine with him, but they're not going to pay him. And
Mhm.
they're hoping that in 2 years they just let him walk and then Kiran kind of takes over that role. But I think that's how I think of him too. Like I think he's good and he's great when he's on this the fifth round rookie contract. But as soon as you have to pay him, like I don't really love him as much. But that being said, he also could take like a huge step forward this year, and that my opinion completely changes. Which I think is still possible. Like I think we kind of talk about Braxton Jones like he's a finished product, which I don't think is the case. Like I think he still has room to get better. So if he does kind of take that next step, then you do sign him to a contract, and then you have a really good swing tackle, or maybe you move him to Kieran to guard or whatever. But I think this kind of, like I said, kind of tells you what the Bears think of Braxton Jones, at least what their plan is for him.
With Braxton Jones, I think there is room for improvement, like with his hands. Like going back and watching him, like I thought he's just still kind of late with his hands all the time. Like he lets guys get into his chest too much. And like that's what drives me nuts about him is he has 35 and an 1/8 inch arms and like he doesn't use them at all. Like he never makes first contact most of the times in pass protection. It drives me crazy. But what really worries me about Braxton, I guess we're like I have my doubts about him is like I just still think he doesn't have enough range of pass protection. Like guys just get on his hip too much. And I don't think that's ever going to really change. I think that's just always going to be a limitation of his game. But if he can get better with his hands and like make contact earlier, then that's
if
his
he
pathway
can,
to succeed. I just like haven't seen that in 2 years. Obviously, that's like a lot to ask from a guy
if
coming from Southern Utah. But I'm just saying like that's the path I think he needs to take in order to take that next step and earn a payday from the Bears.
if he can develop a good outside shoulder punch, he can deal with the guys getting his outside hip because he can
Mhm.
knock them off their track and knock them back towards the inside. Like if you want to be very frustrated, watch a game of Trent Williams, then watch a game of Braxton Jones because they are very similar frames, very similar like physically. Trent's probably a better athlete, I'm sure he
Mhm.
is, but the way that they need to win is very similar. Trent is amazing at it. Braxton isn't near it yet. Where that exactly what you're saying, the hand fighting, the technique of hitting that outside shoulder when a guy is going outside to knock him back inside his own lane where he can take control with his long arms. That's what he needs to be able to do. He has the physical tools to do that, but it's not as simple as just I'm going to punch that guy's shoulder, right? It
Mhm.
takes years of practice, years of timing, years of knowing what they're going to counter you with to be able to react to it too. And it's like I think Braxton can be a good tackle in this league. I also think the neck injury last year, he was not the same after he came back from it, which makes me this pick makes me wonder a little bit if they're at all worried about that because he came back and he was serviceable, but he did not have the same mobility that he did before. Um, so ultimately, I get it. I don't know that I'm sitting here thinking I want to pay Braxton Jones. So I'm all for getting a developmental guy. I just think 75 felt a little rich to it, but in reality, this guy probably isn't there at 122 because as I'm looking at this board, I'm not sure there's many guys here I would bet on to stay at tackle
I
over.
mean, and he was right. I don't know if I said this yet on the mock drafted database consensus board. He was 82nd. So I mean, like that was like right where he was intended to go. So I agree. I don't know if like we know the NFL like they don't wait around for these guys. Like you could be as raw as ever, and if you're tradesy, they're gonna take you high.
Yeah.
Yeah. So generally, I'm fine with it. I mean, I probably would have preferred a Christian Haynes or an Austin Booker, but I get this pick. I understand why they did it,
Mhm.
and I do think there's some serious upside in this kid. It's, I mean, our board says 133. I don't know how to grade Yale tape.
That's what it is. Like that, you just can't. Like it's so hard. But I'm sure the Bears. I mean, obviously the Bears have access to more tape, and they can interview him and talk to his coaches and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
if they think he can be a future NFL starter, then you have a home run at pick 75.